We would like to welcome everybody to our informational meeting about fire services within the city of Hazelwood. We would like to start off the meeting with talking about how normal and unnormal has been in the city of Hazelwood with our meetings. We have done our best to try and come up with these town hall meetings to try and get the input of the residents during our council meetings. We have done the same with Zoom, of trying to Zoom out and do our everyday business through Zoom. It's unprecedented times. There's changes being made all the time, whether it be federal, state, county, and we, the city here, have to follow those changes, and we sure do thank the residents for following along. Our most important thing here tonight that we have to discuss is our city budget. Certainly the city has had a financial crisis over the last few years. We have been trying to do everything we could with the Robertson Fire Protection District and the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District and the Hazelwood City Council to try and come up with solutions. Here we are tonight. We've pretty much exhausted all of those solutions by either our council meetings or our previous town hall meetings that covered our budget, but we're still getting questions from residents and confusion from residents on what actually the city is doing to solve these problems, along with negotiations with the fire districts on how we're going to solve these problems. But we have been working together to come up with some solutions. We do need to find out from the residents exactly what they want. We'll be doing some surveys here, talking about those surveys in our next city council meeting next week and in the following weeks, and the city's going to have to make a decision on which direction they're going to go. But at this point in time, we are still doing our informational meetings and trying to get the information out to the residents and trying to answer all the questions we can, whether you call here at City Hall or call a council member or talk to one of our staff members, our employees out on the streets. Everybody should have this information and be able to answer those questions the same way with all the talking points that the city has. So I'd like to go ahead at this time and start the informational meeting and turn it over to Mr. Zimmerman.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate that. That was very well said. My name is Matt Zimmerman. I am the city manager, and here's what we're going to do tonight. I will be leading a presentation on the history of how we arrived here and what possible options that we can pursue. Throughout the presentation, there will be several times you'll be asked to participate in live polls. And while you're not required to, your participation and feedback is appreciated. As the mayor said, really and truly, our goal is to find out what the residents think is the best solution to this issue. You can submit questions during the webinar by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be visible to the panelists, and we will address those that we can during the Q&A session near the end of the webinar. We will also provide an opportunity to verbally ask questions or make comments after the Q&A session. Again, we are going to try and keep this very short. This is a very complex issue. I apologize to those of you who have listened in on our webinars in the past. Some of this is going to be the same information you've heard before, but we believe we have some new members on this call, and it's always good to sort of get everybody up to speed on what's going on. Also, if your question is not addressed during the Q&A session, responses will be posted on the City of Hazelwood at www.hazelwoodmo.org/fire-service after the webinar later this week. In addition, we'll be looking at putting out a survey later this month as well. So you'll have an opportunity to participate by that. But again, this is all about trying to find out what the people think is the best solution to this difficult problem. Next slide, please. So Hazelwood is served by 3 different fire agencies. You have the Hazelwood Fire Department, which is marked in orange, and it's basically the middle of town. You have the Robertson Fire Protection District, which is marked in red, which includes basically the west side of town, pretty much everything west of Howdershell. And then the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District, which picks up on the north side all of the Riverwoods, and then the very far east side of the screen over in the Burke City area. So how did we get to this point? So When the city proposed and the residents voted on annexation, the law at that time allows citizens to choose their fire service provider. And then the city would pay the taxes that the residents would normally pay. That was the law at that time. And as part of the annexation, the residents indicated to the city, and then this was included as part of our plan for annexation, to stay with Robertson and Florissant Valley, respectively. And so what does this mean? It means that the city, through both the law at that time and the contracts that were signed at that time, that the city basically has a conduit. So we levy our taxes on those areas, and then we pay the bills that the residents or the property owners would have been paying, the tax they would have been paying to the fire district. So we're kind of a conduit. But as we talk about in a little bit, it's not quite an equal conduit. And so that becomes what the issue is. Next slide, please. So the difference by law is we're only able to collect our tax rate. However, the tax rates for the fire districts have been going up. So our payment in the first year of payments to the two fire districts combined was $1.5 million. In 2017, it was $4.7 million, which is an increase of over 10% per year. And it's hard for us to be able to sustain that, especially as some of our revenues have been going down. As you know, the Ford plant closed in 2008. And so that had some significantly different revenue, loss of revenue. Some other revenues the city has also gone down or been eliminated, like the red light cameras would be another example. And so the city keeps trying to plug this gap in between what we collect and what we pay for fire service through additional taxes and fees that either the city has levied or the voters have approved. Next slide, please. So as you can see, our rate for 2021 was 92 cents. In Robertson, the rate for residential property was $2.40, and in Florissant Valley, it was $1.61. So you can see and of that 92 cents, 22 cents goes for debt for the city. So basically, we're collecting 70 cents per every $100 of assessed valuation, but we're paying out $2.40 or $1.61, and that's that gap in the rates is what's creating the budget crisis that we have. And so, and we do make a note too that City Council will be looking at the tax rate next week, but we're looking at it's going to go back up to 99 cents from where it was. I also want to point out that our tax rate provides all city services. So it isn't just fire, but it's police, it's street maintenance and snow plowing, it's parks, it's park programs and those recreational, all the administrative costs. So our 99 cents does provide a lot of services above and beyond what fire is. Yes, we have some other revenues that come in that help manage that, such as sales taxes, utility taxes, fees, court fines, all those kinds of things. It's just not enough, which I will identify in a couple of minutes. Next slide, please. So as you can see, it also comes down to a cost per person. So in Hazelwood, our cost per person for fire service is $368. In Robertson, it's $735, and in Florissant Valley, it's $192. So again, that is a big difference in terms of what we're being charged for the cost per person, particularly in our largest service area, which is Robertson. They make up about 50% of the population in Hazelwood, or not quite 50% of the population, I'm sorry, 50% of the land area and the assessed valuation. So that makes a big difference. Next slide, please. So as we said, we fund our fire services and all of our other services through the general fund, which everyone pays through their regular taxes. Property taxes would probably be the biggest source, but there's also personal property taxes, like I said, utility taxes, although residents don't pay a utility tax, only business does. A lot of our budget, we have always been known as sort of an industrial city. Not sort of, we are an industrial city. So a lot of our tax base is based on taxing businesses. And so that has also allowed us to try and continue to maintain services by going to our core area. We don't get as much sales taxes as, but we definitely get more business-oriented licenses, like your utility taxes, like your business fees, those kinds of things. And everyone in Hazelwood pays the same rate to the city. But then we have to go and pay the cost differential between what is brought in from the property tax to Robertson and to Florissant Valley. And again, that gap keeps getting bigger as those expenses have gone up and as our revenues have gone down. That's why we keep passing some new taxes. For example, we approved a 1/4-cent sales tax for fire services in 2014. The law changed, so they could go to a 1/4 or 1/2 cent, and the voters approved it going to a 1/2 cent just this past August. We have also implemented a 1/2 cent capital sales tax, a 1/2 cent utility tax. I'm sorry, excuse me, a 1/2 cent economic development sales tax, which are dedicated funds, but they still help us to provide services as much as possible. And of course, we've gotten previous voter approval to be increasing our property tax rate from 31 cents back in 1995 to what will be 99 cents for the tax bill you pay when you pay your taxes in December. So again, we are trying to, what we're doing is increasing our taxes on all of our residents equally, which is what we have to do. And everyone pays taxes and everyone gets the same services. We don't allocate services based on how much taxes people pay or businesses pay. But it's just not enough to keep covering those increasing costs. Next slide, please. So we have had budget issues for a number of years. When I first came here in 2013, we had a deficit. We have had deficits for the past 6 years. It would have been, if we had not terminated the contract in 2018, it would have been 5 years. We are projecting a deficit for the fiscal year that just ended in June. We don't have our final numbers yet, at 2.2 million. And then the deficit for the next fiscal year, or the current fiscal year, which started on July 1, is another 4.5 million. Now, the pandemic did exacerbate those problems. We had originally projected we were going to have a deficit of about 700,000 for 2020. Excuse me. We're in the 21st century now, aren't we? But then after the pandemic, it became 2.2 million. So we are doing everything we can to try and maintain those costs as much as possible, keep trying to find revenues. But based on the current projection, we are projecting that we're going to run out of money sometime in calendar year 2021. Next slide, please. So what have we done? So once we started identifying this issue, how quickly things were going bad in 2014, which was my first year of the budget, we've taken a number of steps. And you can see all of them on here. In the interest of time, I won't take time to go through all of them. But as you can see, we did eliminate 10 administrative positions. So that's a lot. That's about 15% of the total workforce. It's well over 25% of the administrative workforce. For the current fiscal year, we laid off 3 full-timers, 8 part-time positions, and we've also eliminated raises and implemented a hiring freeze. So we are very much trying to get more done, or at least the same amount done, with fewer people, trying to always get more efficient, and doing so without paying those people any more money. So you can see all of this on the screen, all of the other service cuts that we have made. Next slide, please. In addition, we have approved, the voters have approved 3 sales taxes just in the last 3 years. The 1/4 cent fire sales tax, 1/4 cent local option tax, then the increase of the fire sales tax to a 1/2 cent. And like I said, our property taxes have gone from 31 cents to 99 cents in the last 23 years. So those are things we tried to do to implement some revenues. Again, it's taking new revenues to keep trying to fill this gap, but the gap just isn't quite being able to be filled. As you can see, we keep having deficits. We keep them as small as we can, but we cannot indefinitely do deficit spending. The other thing the city council did was went to the voters in the Robertson service area and asked if they would be willing to pass a neighborhood improvement district, or a NID, which is an overlay that would pay the difference between what Hazelwood would cost to provide fire service and what Hazelwood is paying Robertson to provide that service. And we put it on the ballot in April of 2019, and it failed by 3-1. And then we put it back on the ballot in August of 20, and it failed with just under got just over 40% of the yes vote. So that is something where we tried to make a direct impact to the people who have been getting these services without paying the taxes, and see if we could sort of level the playing field, since right now everybody everywhere is paying those taxes, even though they're not everybody in town in Hazelwood are getting all of those services. Because you could live over in the old part of town, if you will, and be paying these higher taxes, but you don't get services from either the fire districts, you get it from the Hazelwood Fire Department. Next slide, please, Becky. So what are our options? And we fully expect to get a lot of questions and comments. That's exactly what this meeting is for tonight. The first one is litigation. The city identified this as a problem going all the way back to 2001, but we really started taking concrete action in 2014. We were not able to have some success in addressing this issue, so the city terminated the contract in December of 2017. We did so with the intent of protecting the services for residents and providing financial security for our organization. And as part of that, we said, look, we're going to give you a year to plan the transition, and we want you to help us with the transition. And instead, what happened is Robertson sued the city. We certainly respect their feelings about this issue, and right now we are working on that. Right now, we are in mediation. We are in mandatory mediation. And we will try and work through a solution with the mediator. Otherwise, the litigation will be going on, which doesn't do anybody any good, and we know that. The only people who get rich are the lawyers, as the saying say. So that's certainly not something that we're necessarily looking to do, but that is certainly a possibility. Next slide. Another issue would be annexation of the fire districts. When we annexed the land back in 1995, when it was finally certified, because there were actually several votes on the annexation, there were 3 votes starting in 1991, Hazelwood became the fire service provider. And then pursuant to the law at that time and pursuant to the contract at that time, we contract with the fire districts to continue to provide those services and then pay on behalf of the residents. The fire districts can place on the ballot a petition to annex their areas. Each of those land, the lands in each of those districts would then go back into the fire districts. People would be paying their taxes directly to the fire district. They would become members of that. And we've had some good conversations, and both fire districts are currently studying possibly of annexing their service areas. And this is part of our conversations, the possibility of also annexing in the Hazelwood service area. So that is definitely an option, and one that we are looking very closely at and working with the fire districts on. Next slide, please. Another is a citizens initiative. Under Missouri law, a group of citizens that live in a certain area can vote to direct the fire districts to take certain actions or policies. So an initiative could include requiring approval of the original intergovernmental agreement when we terminated the contract back in 2017. It could also require that they negotiate a contract for Hazelwood to provide service into that area. So that would require signatures by voters in that area and then approval by the voters. A citizens committee did put a petition, send it to Robertson in December of 2018 to be on the April of 2019 ballot. However, Robertson did not place that question on the ballot. So there was never a vote on that option. That doesn't mean that it couldn't be brought back, or a new petition, I should say, couldn't necessarily be brought back. So that is another option. Next slide, please. And then, of course, the other option is very large service cuts and personnel cuts. Like I said, we have a projected budget deficit of $4.5 million. That includes not paying Robertson after December 31st. So obviously, if those payments go on, we're in a temporary agreement with them right now to pay them $333,000 a month or $4 million per year. If those go on, that budget deficit will go up. So if we don't come up with a long-term funding solution with our fire districts, then there will have to be significant cuts, and they're going to have to come to the fire and police department, because as you've seen in our previous slide, we've already cut most of the other positions, the administrative positions, public works positions, park positions, those have already been cut. So that's where the cuts are going to have to come from. Next slide, please. One of the comments that we have heard repeatedly, both from questions that we have received from residents as well as comments on social media, is why can't we just de-annex the area? And basically, the ability to challenge the annexation expired over 20 years ago. So there's not really a legal basis to de-annex the area. However, the city would also point out that I don't know that there'd be a lot of interest from the residents, because even if they did make a petition and vote to de-annex, they would lose all of their city services, city police, park programs, street maintenance, snowplow, and so on, and they wouldn't necessarily be in the fire district, so they wouldn't have fire district. And then if they did annex into the fire district, they would then end up with higher taxes with less services. So we don't know how viable of an option that is, but it is a question we've been asked. We take all of the questions and comments that we get seriously, and we did want to at least address that briefly in this presentation. We are almost done, I promise. Next slide, please. Another question and comment that we got a lot of by email and social media is not only why do we have an economic development program, but why do we abate taxes? If we just were taxing those properties, then we'd have enough money. Well, first of all, we recognize that while we do have a dedicated half-cent economic development sales fund, which can only be used for economic development purposes, that is somewhat limited. We can't use it to pay for fire service, for example. In addition, there are things that the city looks for. For example, what we have found is lots of time businesses won't come unless they get a tax abatement. Most places that call us say, well, I need a tax abatement. We use what we call the but-for test. But for this tax abatement, this project wouldn't happen. And if we believe that's the case, and we believe that it is a very viable, good opportunity to improve the economy of Hazelwood, bring more jobs, bring other revenues such as sales taxes, utility taxes, business licenses, all those things, then we will consider an abatement. Next slide, please. The other factor that we look at is where is it at? If we're in an area where we're collecting our 99 cents but paying out $2.40 or $1.61, then tax abatement makes some sense for us because we're not losing that money during the abatement period. Obviously, that can expire, and that's a problem. One of the things we try and do is get new developers to sign an agreement that says they'll reimburse the city for whatever we pay the fire districts. There's a new law that was passed, not new now, passed in 2018, that says fire districts are exempt from tax abatement in any event. So we're always trying to find a way to increase jobs, increase payroll, increase our economy, find other revenues for the city without it hurting the taxpayers. And we've been very successful. All you have to do is drive down Lindbergh and you'll see all of the businesses on the left side or the east side where the old Ford plant used to be. You go farther down and you go past McDonald Boulevard, you'll see all that new whole industrial park just before you get to the railroad tracks. That's got over 2,500 jobs in there. We are working the newest industrial park, Hazelwood Trade Port, which is located behind the mall down off of 370. There are 2 buildings done, 2 more almost done, and I'm sorry, 1 more almost done, and 2 more that are planning construction this fall. We have a new business along Pershaw, and 2 new buildings are proposed to go in next year along Pershaw Avenue. They want to get them built while the road's all torn up, so they're ready to open when the new highway is done. And lastly, and we're pretty excited about this, we've really focused on redeveloping Village Square. We know back in the day, it was the place to go in North St. Louis County. And from what everyone tells me, really in all of St. Louis County, I had a lot of people tell me, oh yeah, no, we drove up from Creve Coeur or Manchester or whatever, because that's the place we wanted to be. So we are working with the new owners out of New York City to put in a new facade. We also have a program like a Shark Tank program where new businesses can compete, and then the developer would provide them a year's rent. We would provide them with some seed money, try and get some more new business in there. Unfortunately, we were just getting ready to complete that process when COVID hit. So it's on hold for right now, but it will. But we hope to bring that back next spring. But despite all of that, again, the money we bring in is not enough to cover the difference in the costs that the city is incurring. And there's only so much you can do in terms of economic development. We just can't take what those big increases have meant. And while this new is helping to offset other losses, it's not enough to grow into it. Next question, or next slide, please, excuse me. Okay, Becky, I'm going to turn it over to you. We are now going to start doing a survey, so we hope that people will participate in this. So Becky, please.
Hi, everybody. So we're going to first start with an easy question. Again, we'd love for you to participate. You don't have to. I'm going to go ahead and open the poll so that you can go ahead and click the answer. We would love to know, which fire service area do you live in? Are you in Hazelwood? Do you live in the Robertson Fire Protection District? Are you in the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District? Or are you somehow something other? So go ahead and we'll give you a few more seconds. Looks like we've got about 65% voting right now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. I'll share the results. It looks like most of you, or about 40% of you anyway, are in the Robertson area. 30% are in the Hazelwood Fire Department, 21% in the Florissant Valley area, and 9% are in a different area. So I'm going to go to the next question. We would like to know how you found out about this meeting itself, so that we know if we're making sure we get all of our communications channels and reaching out to as many people as we possibly can. So again, you've got social media, which would be, Facebook, Nextdoor, Twitter. We sent out a postcard, so if you got a postcard, let us know that. If you heard about this from a council member, or if you received a special email from the city because you've signed up for one of our subscription lists, that you heard about it through word of mouth from a family or friend, or if there was some other way you heard about it. All right, give it a few more seconds, but it looks like most everybody has voted. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. All right, it looks like a lot of you found out about this on social media, so that's good. We're glad you're following us on our social media platforms. And then it looks like a lot of you also received it through the postcard and an email from the city, and then word of mouth was a good one from the council members and family and friends. So thank you for that. So then our last question is, based on what you know right now, the information we've provided you, which option would you prefer? So I'll go ahead and start the polling. So we're looking at options that are annexation by fire districts, a citizens initiative, significant budget and service reductions, or an other option. Looking at about 65% right now, so we'll give it a few more seconds. Sorry, not minutes. A few more seconds for everybody to get their votes in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. So it looks like over half of you would prefer to have an annexation by the fire districts, and then 27% of you would like an other option, and 18% like the citizens initiative. And I do want to make note that I do see that hands are being raised. So if you go ahead and give me a second, we'll allow you to have an opportunity to ask questions and provide thoughts and comments in a few slides. So just keep your hands raised and we'll get to you guys. I guess I didn't share those poll results, I'm sorry. So I'll go ahead and share those real quick so you can look through them. All right. Thanks everybody for giving that information to us. We'll go ahead and move on to the question and answer in the comment section. But before we do that, Matt, we do have a question to go back to slides 6 and 7 real quick and talk about the tax rates in a little bit slower pace so people can understand. I think there was a little, we flew through that section, so bear with me. I'm going to go ahead and go back to those slides and I'll turn it back over to you real quick.
Okay, thank you very much, and I apologize. I know I'm probably talking a little fast because I'm used to dealing with this all of the time, and quite frankly, we're really interested in the feedback. We want to leave as much time as possible for comments and for questions. So I apologize if I'm going too fast. So the city's tax rates for the current calendar year is 92 cents, of which 22 cents goes to debt, 70 cents goes to general fund to cover all of our costs, whether it's fire service payments, police, streets, parks, you know, all of those kinds of things. Robertson's rate is $2.40, and Flores and Valleys is $1.61. So those are the rates that they charge. But in the interest of full transparency, we just want to let everyone know our rate's going to go back up to 99 cents when you pay your taxes in December of this year. That's just a number we just established a couple of weeks ago. So we wanted to let everybody know that. I hope that helped, and I hope it was a little slower this time. And then our cost per person, we take a look at what the city pays for that cost. We divide it by the population, and that's how we calculated the cost per capita, which is why, as you can see, and in the case of the fire districts, it's what we pay the fire districts, which is the same thing as the taxes they would have collected from the residents in that area. So what we did was we calculated the total cost by the number of people served in each of those areas. That's how we calculated that Hazelwood is $368 a person, Robertson is $735 a person, and Flores and Valley is $192 a person. Hope that helps.
All right, so let me go back to our question answer slide. All right, so like I mentioned before, there's a way on your computer screen for you to go ahead and raise your hand virtually if you would like to speak. We will allow you to speak, and we've got a 2-minute timer here on the screen that everybody can see, because we want to make sure that everybody, as many people as possible who would like to speak, get that opportunity to speak during this time. And then whatever time we have left over, we'll start working through all the questions that you guys have submitted. So it looks like Daryl Harrison is the first one. So I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, Daryl, no, you do wanna talk. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to talk.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good evening. Thank you for joining
Good.
us.
Hey, I got a question. Got a couple questions for you. So you said in 1990, when you guys annexed with or when Hazelwood took over this area, that we voted to have Robertson stay as our fire district over here, right?
Actually, we had to develop what the plan would be. And as part of the annexation plan, we included that Robertson would be the fire service provider because that's what the residents were telling us that they wanted.
Okay. But with that being said, the board, Hazelwood's Board of Aldermen, had to approve that, correct?
That was part of our annexation plan that was submitted to the Boundary Commission and then ultimately to the voters. That is correct.
Okay. Then why did you guys sign such a long contract?
The contract came in after the annexation, which was a request of the fire district. And since the contract was in conformance with the state law at that time, it was something that the city agreed to as part of, I'm told, of course I wasn't here, as part of not only having good working relationships, but it simply incorporated what the law was at that time.
Okay. Then when should this have been, how long was the contract signed for, basically, is what I'm asking.
The contract did not include an ending date, which is why the city believes that it can be terminated at will by either party.
I got you. Here's the second question. Has anybody audited Robertson Fire Department and found out why it's going up 10% every year?
Under the law, either a group of citizens have to petition the state auditor. First of all, Robertson does get an audit every year, just like the city does in full disclosure. But in terms of asking for a state audit, it requires either a number of signatures from the voters in that area, and I don't know what that number is off the top of my head, or requires a voluntary request by the fire district board. The city has no standing to make that request.
Okay, but do you get what I'm saying? For it to go up 10% and Hazelwood's doesn't go up 10% every year, that just seems weird to me.
And we certainly appreciate your comment, and obviously the voters are going to have to make that decision based on who they vote in, and if they want to consider any type of a citizens initiative or a request for an audit. But again, the city has nothing to do with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Muted. Okay. Thank you very much for your questions. Again, we are excited and want to hear from you guys, your feedback, your comments about all of these options. So we do have a question from Jerry Perry. Where are we with mediation with Robertson? Do we have any dates for a final decision? So we'll start with that, and then there's a second follow-up question.
Actually, our city attorney is also on this call, and I'm going to turn it over to Kevin if he wants to respond to that.
Thank you. The mediation process has been ongoing. We are involved with a retired circuit court judge who is serving as the mediator, Mr. Billings, who I see is on this attendance list, and I and the mediator meet on a regular basis. There have been productive discussions. There is no agreement on a long-term solution that has been implemented, but the discussions have been sincere, and they are the only communication thus far focusing on a path forward, and they have, like any complex problem, they are challenging, but they are also the most productive channel that we have at the moment.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, and then the follow-up question to that is, would a city merger of would a city merger of Hazelwood and Florissant be possible and get rid of Robertson issues?
A merger of Hazelwood and Florissant Valley would not change the situation that we have with Robertson. It would simply mean that Florissant Valley would start providing service to the Hazelwood service area, and then those people served by Florissant Valley and Hazelwood would be paying their taxes directly to the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District. But that in and of itself would not be a solution. That's one of the reasons why in our conversations, we're trying to get a holistic solution that involves both fire districts and the city as much as possible. That's our goal, at least. I think Kevin wants to add something.
Well, I understood the question to be, would a merger of the city of Hazelwood and the city of Florissant resolve this problem? And the answer to that question is no. The assets and liabilities of each of those cities would continue into any merged city, even if such a thing were to be possible. It would not resolve this issue.
All right, thank you. It looks like we're getting more hands raised. I'm going to go ahead and allow Cliff to talk. Cliff, you should be able to speak now. You might have to unmute yourself. There you are.
Go ahead. I've got a question on tax abatement. Has there ever been an audit of all tax abatements by Hazelwood so that the citizen could know how much taxes Hazelwood loses that way? Thank you.
No, that's a great question. And we have never done a study to say if this business had come and had not been abated taxes, this is how much taxes it would have generated, or if that development's in Robertson or Florissant Valley, how much the city has lost in that area. In part because, again, most of these projects wouldn't happen but for the abatement. So we've never really considered that to be a specific issue to take a look at.
Well, it seems like you'd want to know but for whether where we're losing money or not, if this business survives, et cetera, and so on.
Well, again, our primary goal with our economic development program is to increase the number of jobs and the total amount of payroll in Hazelwood. So we have to remember that's our number one priority here. And as well as looking at what other revenues it might generate and what the overall impact to the citizens and to the organization would be. So again, assuming that a business would have come if it hadn't been abated, which I don't think is likely, certainly is something that could have been looked at or could be looked at. But I would also remind our residents too, we've been cutting a lot of the staff that does that kind of work. So we're pretty much just trying to keep the lights on here.
Okay, well, that was my question. I think you would want to know. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, and it looks like we have another hand. Rita Cromer, you may need to unmute yourself. Rita, you should be good to go.
My question is, in order to get an annexation question on the ballot, would we have to go to all the citizens and get them to sign a petition like we tried to do before?
Yes, under the law, the way the law is written right now, if the fire districts decided to put a petition on the ballot, it would require signatures based on a certain percentage of the number of people who voted in the last gubernatorial election. And I don't remember what that number is off the top of my head, but it does require signature of the voters. Then it does require voter approval.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Thank you, Rita.
All right. And then it looks like we have Clara Fates. Again, you may have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
We can hear you.
On the de-annexation, so Hazelwood residents, is part of the question, would Hazelwood residents want to become annexed into the Robertson Fire District? Is that one of the questions you're asking?
Well, one of the options that we have would be to go out and put on the ballot for the residents in Robertson and or the residents in Florence Valley to vote to annex into the fire districts, which would then make them residents of those districts, and they would pay their taxes directly.
So we wouldn't have a Hazelwood Fire Department?
At this point, most of our conversations have focused on only annexing the Robertson and Florissant Valley areas, but that certainly is a possibility that we are exploring as well, of also taking over the Hazelwood Fire Department service area. So that is something that is being studied.
But you couldn't do that unless a certain number of residents in the city of Hazelwood signed a petition to do that.
That is correct.
And I don't know why anybody would. Why would we want to annex into another fire district where their rate is so much higher than ours and pay them just for fire district and still pay the city of Hazelwood for everything else? And mind you, we have never voted on the Robertson Fire District or the Florissant Fire District to raise the taxes that they have.
No, certainly I
against
understand that, and we didn't really touch on, like we did in our budget meetings, the equity issue just briefly we did about some people are paying higher taxes to provide the cost of services in other areas. But the rest of this, that's really just a comment, and we appreciate your opinion, and that's what we're here for, is to let people express their opinion.
Thank you.
Could I add one clarification? In fact, all of the tax increases that the fire districts have had over the last decades were approved by the voters. And the voters in Hazelwood who live in the service areas of the fire districts voted on those tax increases.
All right, thank you, Clara. All right, we've got another question from David. All right, David, you may have to unmute yourself.
Is it unmuted?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay, it's a pretty simple question. It's the inverse. Why can those of us who live in the main body of the city not vote on these issues and or not vote Robertson or Flo Valley District out of Hazelwood? Why? What is? It seems like we're being asked to pay taxes, but we don't get to vote on the taxes that we are paying. I'd like some clarification on that.
Evan, you want to handle that one?
Yes, sir. State law establishes the areas, the constituencies to vote on various election propositions, and state law establishes that the question of annexing to a fire district is only voted on by the people in the district. Tax rates are only voted on by the people in the district or served by it. So the constituencies who get to vote on various tax issues or ballot issues is determined by state law. Neither the city nor the districts make that choice on their own.
And there's nothing that we could do to change that. I mean, this gives a great advantage to Robertson.
I don't know who it advantages or disadvantages, but the state law is uniform across the state.
Thank you.
Right. Rita looks like she has another question.
Yes, I think I might need clarification of what annexation means. I was thinking annexation meant that Robertson and Florissant Valley would all agree to be one department, one fire department with the Hazelwood Fire Department. Is that not what you're talking about when you're talking about annexation?
There can be multiple different types of annexation depending on the petition that's put in the ballot, and then those that are affected would vote, going back to Kevin's comments about how the state law is set up. So it could be a petition for those people in those fire districts to annex. It could be a petition to also annex the Hazelwood Fire Department area into one of those two fire districts. It could be a petition to not create one new district, but annex all into one fire district or into the Hazelwood Fire Department. It would just depend on what the voters would want to do. And that's part of the reason for this meeting, is we want to start hearing what do the people think we ought to do. Let's ask the people what they want, because they're the ones who are going to have to vote on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're getting a lot of people wanting to talk. This is great. We want to hear from you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Alan, it's your turn.
Okay, the question is, what are the taxes that are being brought in the Robertson district from the residents? And you mentioned that these aren't going out at a one-to-one rate, coming in and going out, and why not?
I'm not sure I quite understand your question, so I'm going to answer what I think you're asking. If that's not right, please let me know. But based on the tax rates that Robertson had set, the amount that the city would have been paying a couple of years ago was about 4.2 years ago, was about 4.2 million. Then it would have been about 4.7 million for last year. Obviously, right now we're in an interim stage, and then you would have to do the math, which we've never done, to say, well, if we're basically receiving, whether it be $1 for every $2.40, it's not even that, because like I said, 22 cents of that goes for debt, 70 cents to 240. We could calculate that. I just never have, to be honest with you.
Okay, so nobody has any idea if we're collecting the same amount of money that we're paying out when we live in the Robertson district, and where that money's going.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, as I've said, the city brings in other revenues as well that the fire districts don't necessarily have a right to, such as sales taxes, such as utility taxes, business license. And it's hard for us to be able to calculate all of that, because we don't really know what businesses or homeowners are paying in some of those taxes. We could look up the property tax bills, which would be very labor intensive, for example, but we can't guess the utility taxes. We can't guess the sales taxes. So it would be a very rough estimation at best that probably wouldn't necessarily be accurate. What we do know is not only what our costs have done versus our revenue, and what we do know is that for every dollar that we collect, we are losing more money than that from property taxes.
All right, thank you, Alan. I'm gonna go ahead. So we do only have a few minutes left. We want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I know we've got lots of comments, we have lots of questions. So we'll go ahead and continue listening to your feedback and your questions. If we don't get a chance to get to you, we'll try to get questions answered and up on the website for you. And you can share your feedback. We've got a form on our website you can see it on your screen, hazelwoodmo.org/fireservice, that you can go and fill out and send us your questions and your comments. We also have an email address there for you and a phone number if you would prefer to call and leave a message. We love hearing your feedback. And we'll also be sending out a survey towards the end of this month to get a lot more input from everybody. People, okay. So again, we're still here. We can still answer some questions. It looks like we have another hand raised. So Clara, I'll go ahead and allow you to talk.
I'm not sure, but I think the last person's question may have been, if we're taking in on just property tax alone, and I'll just round everything up to $1 per 100, but we have to pay out to Robertson $2.40, and we're only collecting $1 from everybody that lives in the Robertson Fire District. We're behind $1.40. Is that more or less correct? So yes, everybody else in the city is helping to pay is having to make up that $1.40. That's where the deficit is.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of calculating it in round numbers. Yes, thank you, Clara.
And I agree with the guy who had the first comment. I do think the Robertson Fire District needs to be audited, but unfortunately, it's up to the citizens who are in that fire district to want to do that. And they're going to have to take the initiative to want to do that, to see where their money's going, because it is very apparent to me that that kind of increase in the money that they're getting, I happen to know they're one of the highest tax rates for a fire district. I would like to know where that money's being spent and how it's being spent if I was paying towards that. And I do feel I am paying towards that, but I don't have the ability to ask for an audit because I'm not in that fire district, even though I'm helping to pay for it.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Great. So Cheryl, I'm gonna allow you to talk.
Yeah, I submitted several questions through the little chat, but looks like they're not being read. Does the annexation by fire district mean those, for example, living in Robertson would no longer be a part of Hazelwood and would just be called Robertson again and subject to higher taxes? Am I misunderstanding that? And then
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, go on, because answer that question first, please.
Okay, sure. No, that's a great question. And the answer is no. Residents would continue to be Hazelwood residents. It only means that they would also be in the fire protection district boundaries. Right now, they are not. So nothing else changes other than they would be both in Hazelwood, still be Hazelwood residents, still pay Hazelwood taxes, receive Hazelwood services, and they would be in Robertson and they'd be paying Robertson taxes and continue to receive Robertson services. Same with Florissant Valley.
Okay, so I mean, that kind of, to me, sounds like the NID you were trying to get past, just throw higher taxes at those living in Robertson. I guess this is just another way to come at it through annexation instead of the NID.
Well, we did hear a number of comments from residents about how during talking about the NID and talking about the budget, about their desire to be back in Robertson. So we're merely identifying that that's an option. Whether or not that's the preferred option of the residents, that's what we're trying to find out.
Okay, and then two real quick, this may go along with audit, is how does Robertson justify their rates compared to Hazelwood and Flo Valley? Like, what's the justification of why they need so much more? And then is there anybody in Hazelwood government who can just say to them, hey, we can't afford you, sorry, we got to lay you off?
We don't have that authority. They are their own separate governmental agency. So they make their own decisions on their budget. They make their own decision on their tax rates, and they, like the city council, are accountable to the voters.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. I do want to go ahead and point out that we are receiving all the questions that are coming through the Q&A. We're just prioritizing the people that have their hands raised to be able to speak. And again, so if your questions are coming to us through the question and answer, we will get those questions kind of pulled together and get answers up on our website for everybody. So don't worry if you're submitting questions that way. We are getting them and we will get you guys answers. All right, so it looks like I'm gonna go ahead and Heather Jones, you should be able to speak.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I have actually, I think, two questions towards the Attorney O'Keefe. And the first one is about the mediation. In the mediation, I'm just wondering, is it part of the mediation where it's very difficult for Robertson Fire District to accept that their contract was terminated in 2017 because I'm trying to figure out what is the common ground the mediator is trying to get at. I mean, if the contract is already terminated, then doesn't Hazelwood have the right to, for a fair and due process, to open up a bid to bidders for a new fire service protection in the Robertson area that's servicing the 17% of residents?
Well, let me, first of all, we're all operating within a set of statutes that govern how fire districts operate, how cities operate, and how they operate jointly. So we have to work within that framework. So we don't have the latitude of sort of bidding it out. There is no provision in state law for that to occur. But let me address your question about the mediation and its orientation. The focus on this mediation effort has been to find common ground with a view towards a permanent solution to the problem of the current arrangements between the fire district and the city. So it is a slow, steady process of exploring possibilities, of evaluating how they will affect the parties in the long term, and whether there can be support and consensus in proposing that to the voters and or the court. So the focus is not on the past, but on the future. And the goal is to bring the parties to agreement on a solution long-term going forward.
So maybe I don't understand that part. Is the focus is on the future. So if in 2017 it was terminated, what's happening now? What did Hazelwood do? Did they lease out, or did they still employ Robertson Fire District even though they were terminated in 2017? What has happened since 2017, I guess, so everyone knows the current situation?
We have entered into a series of agreements with Robertson whereby we continue to make payments based upon the payments from 2018. And in order to see to it that they're still in a position to continue to provide service, and the city is in a position to have predictability about its revenues and obligations. So the focus has been the series of interim agreements to maintain the status quo. The question of the efficacy of the city's termination of the contract and its consequences, that's the question that is in the litigation between the parties, the lawsuit that Robertson filed. And if mediation is unsuccessful, then that litigation will go forward and a judge will decide whether or not that termination was lawful and effective.
Okay, and so the payments that you're making for 2018, they're at the same rate. The rate hasn't changed. Like, no one said, we're not going to pay you this much. We're only going to pay you the same amount that we are paying Hazelwood Fire Department.
Our agreement with Robertson for 2020 on a month-to-month basis is to pay them the same amount we agreed to pay them in 2019.
All right, so I'm sure you have more questions, but we have lots of people that also have comments that they would like to get out. So if you want to get back in line, please go ahead and raise your hand. And if we have time, we can circle back to you. All right, I do want to make a mention. We're getting a couple questions as, if people want to learn more about this, where can they go? Again, our website is up here on the screen, hazelwoodmo.org/fire service. And you can see, I'll have this presentation up there by the end of the day tomorrow, along with the slide deck that we've provided here. You can see other information about our budget and all our previous virtual town halls that we've been having. But this might be a question for Mr. Zimmerman. How can people take action with their fellow citizens? How do they move petitions forward? Can you give a little bit of a next steps, so to speak, or where we might go?
First of all, and I'll defer to our city attorney a little bit on that in a second. I also want to say that the city is not in a position to offer legal advice to private citizens. Having said that, basically they would have to determine what they want. They want the petition to say, and then there are forms and there are statutory rules on what those forms have to say, and then they would have to go out to all of the registered voter, or to however many registered voters that they wanted to go out and get signatures, is how they would have to get petitions passed. But Kevin, I don't know if you want to add anything technical to that.
Well, that's accurate. I would indicate in terms of who can someone talk to, the purpose of this event and this forum is to solicit the input of residents of the city of Hazelwood to inform the Hazelwood mayor and council about their views as to how the council and the city should move forward. So I would invite you to contact your council member and your elected officials in the city to tell them your perspective.
And we do have all the contact information for the council members on our website. And so you can find all that information there too. So we'll go ahead and we'll head to Brian. See, he's got a question or a comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess I have a clarifying question and then some comments. So it sounds like for annexation and a lot of these other proposed solutions, it really requires consent or signatures from the citizens specifically in the Robertson Fire District. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay, so I get, and I've heard other people speaking tonight, I get why they don't want to just pay taxes separately to the fire district, because obviously that would raise their taxes, which kind of goes back to this equity issue of other people paying for other services they're not receiving. But so I just really feel like, and I mean, this, I guess it is a situation, but everything's being held hostage, and the Hazelwood budget is being, really taken down to the bone. So I really feel like, as others have expressed, instead of asking those people in the district to pay more taxes up front, because that's not going to go over well, that I guess maybe the audit, because really the rates are so profoundly different, it really just begs the question how and why. And it's not really a city of Hazelwood thing. So I feel bad coming to the city meeting, because it's not really anything you guys can do. It's really about the fire district and why it's so profoundly more than everyone around them. But I guess the last thing I would say for the city of Hazelwood is, I'm a young, 26-year-old looking to buy my first house within the next, 6 to 8 months. And I would love nothing more to stay in North County. But, the kinds of things that are getting cut from Hazelwood, half the Civic Center East closed, snow and leaf and community events. Those are the kind of things, they might seem small, but they do matter. So I think cutting even more to the city and adding more taxes isn't the solution. So I would be very much against more cuts, and police for sure would be not so good. So thank you for the time. Sorry to go over.
Thank you very much for your comments. We really appreciate it.
All right, Linda, I'm gonna let you talk. You may have to unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted.
We can hear you, Linda.
Hi, a question. Comparatively, how much do we pay them a year?
We are contractually right now through his service agreements paying them $4 million a year.
Okay.
In the past, the payments have ranged over time. Our total payment to the two fire districts were as high as $4.7 million back in 2017, the last year that we paid Robertson pursuant to the contract. We still pay Florissant Valley pursuant to that contract.
Now, if you went to go ahead and sue Robertson, how would you lose money? Really?
Well, again,
how much would it cost you
didn't
to
sue
sue
Robertson.
them, but then you have that couple $1 million a year free. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or am I off?
No, I understand what you're saying, and it's certainly understandable your question / comment. But again, the city didn't sue Robertson. The city terminated the contract pursuant to its legal rights, and they sued us. So we do have to remember that too.
So would it cost more to sue them than it would be the money that you would get in return?
As Kevin O'Keefe has said, our focus is looking on moving forward with a long-term solution rather than spending not only 6 or 7 figures on the city, but an equal amount by the fire district. We don't see that as necessarily our best moving forward. Our preference would be to work with the residents and the fire districts to come up with a long-term solution that would be supported by the citizens, knowing full well that if we don't, then we're going to kind of be down to option 3 or other options. And option 3, just as a reminder, is service reductions and budget cuts.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Those were great.
All right. Looks like we've got 4 more people in the queue right now. So we'll keep going, I think. Rita, you should be available. Yep, we can hear you, Rita.
Okay. When you are trying to decide how much you are paying to Robertson per person, you are basing it upon residential houses in the area. Now, this area has a lot of apartment complexes and it's very industrial. So what do they pay? Do they pay property taxes like residents do? Or how unfair is it to just limit it to what the residents are paying as property taxes and not considering what's being spent to serve those apartment complexes and the businesses by the fire department?
No, that's a very understandable question, but we don't actually pay them based on the cost per person. We pay them based on the amount of tax, or we were paying them based on the amount of taxes that would have been paid by the residents. And everybody in every district, city, Robertson, Floyd Valley, they do pay taxes. So whether it's a business, an apartment complex, or a single family home, they are all paying taxes to the appropriate governmental agency. And then we pay based on what the taxes would have been, not based on the number of people served. We're simply trying to provide a basis of cost comparison. We're also trying to get a cost per call, but we've not been able to get the call data yet from Robertson or Flores and Valley, because that might be a more equitable way of analyzing it. But this is the only data that we have.
Okay, but what, when you're figuring out how much per person, it's based only upon property tax. It's not based upon, like, each individual that's in an apartment complex and all the people that are in the businesses, they are not paying property taxes in Hazelwood. But
No,
yet
they pay property taxes in Hazelwood.
The renters do? Individual
I
renters?
presume they pay it in terms of as part of their total rent that goes to the landlord who pays the taxes.
Okay, all right. I just didn't understand that, so thank you.
No, great, very great questions. Thank you. Again, we're interested in people's time, but we want to get to our questions. I apologize I'm sorry to get through the comments. I apologize we can't get to the questions tonight because then, we're asking everyone to stay all night and that's not fair to you. So we will answer the questions through our website, hopefully by Friday. It might be early next week, but we will get to all of the questions through our website. I'm sorry, we just didn't have time today. But I'm not totally sorry because I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to get these questions and comments through it from our residents tonight. So next one, Becky.
All right, so Joy. Oh.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
All right, so my question is, I guess, the inverse of some of the previous questions that have been asked. Has there been any assessment made of the Hazelwood Fire Protection Service and whether or not the city is charging the amount that it actually costs? The discrepancy between Robertson and Hazelwood may not entirely be because Robertson is charging too much. Could it be that Hazelwood is not charging enough for what it actually costs to provide fire protection service?
Wow, that's a really great question. First of all, we can only charge the taxes that we can either by state law or by voter approval. And as we talked about, we've passed almost all of the taxes that we have. In addition, almost any government service that we have does not pay for itself. That's one of the reasons why government does it, is because if it made money, the private sector would probably do it. So we always use our overarching taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, utility taxes, to help offset the operating cost. In terms of whether or not that's the right cost, which was part of your question, yes, we look at that as part of the budget every year, and we take a look at the number of calls per firefighter, how much busy time how many times they're on calls versus other things they have to do. There are standards set forth by the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, and we're always trying to make sure that we're in compliance with those standards.
Okay, so what about benefits, pay, and other things for firefighters? How does Hazelwood line up with Robertson?
Our firefighters make, in terms of total compensation, our firefighters make, I would estimate, we only have their 2018 payroll data from Robertson, but based on that, I would say looking at total compensation is probably somewhere around $20,000 less per firefighter. It varies, of course, but on average, I'd say about 20,000.
Would bringing the two in line, I know I'm out of time, but would bringing the two in line be a potential mediation solution for potentially reducing the cost, possibly increasing the cost for Hazelwood?
Kevin, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
I'll try to tackle that very quickly. I think what Mr. Zimmerman was saying is that on average, total compensation, firefighters in Hazelwood earn about $20,000 less than firefighters in Robertson. And the idea of raising Hazelwood firefighter pay has not been considered in mediation because it does not really lead to a solution to the city's financial problem.
I guess, or lowering, or proposing to Robertson that they lower the pay so that the compensation package is in line with the two.
Again, the city has no authority to impose that on Robertson.
Well, not an imposition, just as a proposal in mediation that Robertson do that.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and Alan.
Follow-up question, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Are you saying that Robertson residents don't pay $2.40 per 100 assessed property value? We only pay 92 cents per 100?
That's correct.
If you live in Hazelwood.
No, I live in Robertson, in Hazelwood.
If you live in Hazelwood and are served by Robertson, you do not pay Robertson $2.40. You pay Hazelwood 91 cents.
Okay, so who's voting in that Robertson should be paid the $2.40 per 100? I don't see that people in Robertson would have voted that in.
Every tax increase that Robertson has levied has been approved by the voters who vote in the Robertson Fire Protection District, and that includes residents of Hazelwood who are served by Robertson Fire District.
Yeah, but you just said that that isn't a tax increase because we all pay the exact same tax. Whether you live in Robertson District or not.
Right. So each time that the fire district, either fire district, goes to the voters, they're able to say, we would like to increase our tax rate. If the voters approve that, which they have 3 separate times, then the calculation pursuant to the law at that time, pursuant to the contract at that time, says the city pays that additional increased amount. So when the voters increased the maximum tax rate by, I believe it was 50 cents in 2014, our payments to Robertson went up by $1 million because we weren't able to raise our tax rate, but they were able to raise their tax rate, so we had to pay more.
Okay, so they're not really getting a tax rate. They're getting just a paycheck.
They're getting a fee equal to what they would have collected had they levied a tax in that area.
Okay.
Right.
All right, thank
All right,
you.
very good questions. Thank you.
All right, so that's all the hands raised that we have right now. And to be respectful of everybody's time, we're looking at 8:23, so we've gone over just by a few minutes. So I do want to say, I know somebody asked how many people we had on, and at one point we had over 85 people on this webinar, which is a phenomenal turnout. So thank you everybody for showing up and for listening to us and then providing some feedback. And I think at this point, I'll turn it back over
Actually,
to you,
I believe,
Matt.
Mayor, if you want to make a few comments.
Just in closing of the meeting, I'd like to thank everybody for participating. It was enjoying sitting here listening to a variety of questions that were asked. Many of these are questions that council members have gotten phone calls, like I said earlier, are questions here at the council chambers, or just questions of the staff and city council members. So this does help us understand what the residents are thinking, understand what the information the residents want. And we will be continuing on this conversation. We are scheduled to have our next council meeting next week on next Wednesday night. And we will carry on this conversation and possibly talk about having future meetings, town hall meetings, as we did here tonight. Certainly, once again, appreciate everybody's support and the Zoom meeting on how we're doing our surveys and getting our information. We certainly need your help. Thank you once again.
Thank you and good night.
All right, thank you everybody. Again, go to our website and you can find this information, and we'll get those questions up there in the next couple days.
All right, thank you and good night, everyone.